Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Hungary is heading into a closely watched election next month, with Viktor Orbán facing his toughest challenge in 16 years from Peter Magyar's Tisza party. Now reports of a Kremlin-linked online influence campaign have added a new geopolitical dimension to the race. Joining us is István Hegedűs. He's chairman of the Hungarian Europe Society. Mr. Hegedűs, welcome back to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation once again.
So, pleasure. So, here we have, the first real threat to Viktor Orbán's supremacy in Hungary in 16 years. What's so different about Peter Magyar and Tisza?
Well, he came from nowhere 2 years ago, so it's a very brand new organization, Tisza, and he became a politician just 2 years ago after many scandals of Fidesz. So he was able to get credibility from voters who probably before did not really believe in the victory of previous opposition parties. And he created an earthquake, first on the side of the opposition, to seduce almost all voters who are Orbán haters, let me phrase this way, and then later on some uncertain voters and even former Fidesz supporters. And he made it with a professional, very talented political campaign. Before that, political messages, but we are in the very middle of a campaign when you can see there are a lot of people coming together all over in Hungary, wherever he goes, and he makes campaign events 3-4 times a day. So he's everywhere, in the small villages and in the big cities as well. And I think the opposition voters finally found someone, a charismatic leader, whom they believe might finally fight and win against Orbán.
What is Peter Magyar's message that is so appealing to voters?
Well, he talks mostly about domestic issues: healthcare, corruption, social policy, education, and he attacks, of course, Orbán because of his pro-Russian stance as well. He's also very pro-European, at least late in the last period, he has become more and more pro-European. He's very cautious about the case of Ukraine, but in general, he's very anti-Russian. So this package is good for, let's say, more left-wing, for more liberal, and even for more moderate conservative voters as well. It's a sort of coalition of voters who finally, as I said, believe that this guy represents something which is anti-Orbán, but without becoming a second Orbán in the future.
Okay, now currently the most recent polls are showing a difference in support of over 10%. It's more like 12 or 13%, with Tisza in the lead. How likely is it that he'll be able to maintain that lead over the next 4 weeks? The elections are, of course, on April the 12th.
Exactly, and that's the real question, whether the polls can be translated into votes. And actually there are differences in what different research institutes show, and it's very important whether the difference at the end, even if Fidesz loses and Tisza wins, whether the difference will be 3% or 5 to 8%. 3% might not be enough because we have a complicated electoral system. And of course, Fidesz has changed the system during 16 years many times, not only gerrymandering what they introduced, but they changed where are the limits for the individual constituencies. And moreover, they introduce a system which helps the biggest party. Now, Fidesz seemed to be the biggest party on the one side for 16 years, and Tisza is, of course, now the biggest party on the other side. But Tisza has still some challengers among the so-called old opposition parties. And if they take away some votes in the individual constituencies, even if Tisza wins at the party list, we have two votes, one for the party list and one in the individual constituencies, Tisza might lose the elections in case Fidesz wins more individual mandates in the individual constituencies.
Right, so all to play for at the moment. Now, there are reports that Russia is getting involved in the Hungarian election to support Viktor Orbán, and that we have, or Russia has sent some GRU personnel under diplomatic cover for that aim. What are these people doing to influence the election?
Well, according to the news which are spread in the independent segment of the media, which is dominated by Fidesz, but the independent media is still with us. And there are great journalists who found it out that actually Russian spies have arrived to Hungary, as you said, in diplomatic cover, and they are experts how to spread disinformation. These guys have worked already in Moldova some months ago. Actually, they were not very successful, and they try to provide content which can be used by Hungarian media people who are pro-governmental, and they can change the rhetoric and the content following the potential taste of the Hungarian citizens. So it won't be direct Russian propaganda, but translated into Hungarian reality. Whether it will work, whether it's not too late for Orbán, whether it has any influence, it's still very early to analyze.
Well, as you touched on the fact that Russia did exactly the same in Moldova, which is a smaller and poorer country, and it didn't work there. Is it reasonable to assume that it's unlikely to work in Hungary with a richer, perhaps more politically sophisticated electorate?
Well, there is a hope that, the very primitive, not sophisticated anti-Ukrainian campaign has reached its limits, and it's very different to the situation when 4 years ago the war has started, the aggression has started. And maybe it won't work because people are more fed up with everyday problems, domestic issues. And then there is no miracle. And whatever genius Russian spies might not help Orbán anymore. But we never know. The fight is for a small segment of the voters who have not decided yet whom to vote for. This is a very small segment. Actually, most of the people know very well, and the polls have shown that there is not much change. People know exactly whom they want to vote for, whether they like Orbán or hate him, whether they like Peter Magyar or simply accept him or hate him. That's the question.
Right, so quite clear-cut, it would seem. Just very briefly, if you would, Mr. Hegedűs, the Druzhba pipeline, Orbán has sent an unofficial delegation to inspect the reason for the stoppage of Russian oil going through it and into Hungary. What's the political play here?
Unfortunately, what President Zelensky said about Orbán, criticizing him in a rough language, might help Orbán somewhat. Peter Magyar reacted very well, and he also criticized both Volodymyr and Vladimir, as he used these names. and he tries to be a little bit more neutral in this debate. But for Orbán, it's very important to show that he's fighting back against Ukraine and portrays Zelensky as the enemy of Hungary, who stopped the pipeline, who personally maybe stopped the pipeline, and there is no oil coming from Ukraine at the moment. And again, the question is how many people believe in his blame game, or how many people would think that the reason why prices are going up has very different background, let's say the war around Iran, for example. And I think that these arguments might be more convincing than simply blaming Zelensky personally.
Understood. István Hegedűs, thank you very much, as always, for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a good evening.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.